You heard me. She slept in her car last week. Then the laugh. The words, "Time to cut her off," sliced through the cracked door. I rebuilt every brick in that house for them. They thought I was just the girl in the vest. They don't know I already set the charges to blow the whole thing up right when I raise my glass. My name is Addison Stewart. I am 33 years old, and I own Stewart Works Build Co. I am a founder, a creator, a woman who understands the integrity of a level line and the scent of freshly cut pine. I know the grit of drywall dust under my fingernails and the deep, abiding satisfaction of turning a blueprint into a home. My world is built on things that are solid, measurable, and real. My family's world is built on appearances. We live in Graybridge, a town that prides itself on its postcard-perfect Main Street, especially at Christmas. The skeletal trees are wrapped in glittering white lights, and every shop window has a wreath. It's the kind of town where everyone knows your name, or at least, they know your family's name. And the Stewart name means something here, though what it means depends on who you ask. If you ask about my father, Gabe Stewart, they'll tell you he's the heart of the town. He runs the Blue Lantern Diner, a place of worn Formica countertops and coffee that's always on. He's a good man, a kind man, a man who will give you the shirt off his back and then apologize if it's not the color you wanted. His kindness is a deep, warm blanket, but it's also a shield. He recoils from conflict like a hand from a hot stove, a trait that has left me undefended my entire life. If you ask about my mother, Eleanor, they'll talk about her elegance. She volunteers, she hosts, she wears tasteful cashmere. She is the epitome of Graybridge refinement. Eleanor believes in polished silver, crisp linens, and the crushing importance of what the neighbors think. My life. The smell of industrial sealant. The clang of hammers. The sweat is an affront to her. She hates the noise of a miter saw and the practical, sturdy lines of my work boots. She sees my competence as a social liability. Then there's my sister, Tessa, 30 years old, and the daughter Eleanor always wanted. Tessa lives in North Waverly, the new money suburb with oversized houses and identical landscaping. She married well, which in my mother's eyes is the highest possible female achievement. Her husband is Colton, a man whose smile never quite reaches his eyes. He's a lawyer at Ash Alder LLP, a firm with a name that sounds like old trees and old money, but is really just a Shark Tank with better carpet. Tessa is soft where I am calloused, polished where I am rough. She has never, to my knowledge, changed a tire or balanced a budget. And me, I'm the independent one, the reliable one. The one who built a business from scratch with a used pickup truck and a set of tools I bought with my college tuition refund. My apartment is small, clean, and quiet, a sanctuary from the sawdust of the day and the subtle, cutting remarks of my family. My calendar is a fortress of site visits, client meetings, and supply runs, starting at 5 a.m. and ending long after the lights on Main Street have flickered on. I am proud of the life I've built. I am proud of the calluses on my palms. This pride, it seems, is mine alone. For the last 10 years, I have been the family's silent benefactor. When my father's diner struggled during the downturn, it was my company's anonymous donation that kept the lights on. When my mother decided she simply had to go to Hawaii for their anniversary, it was my credit card that paid for the entire trip. First class, the designer bags she carries, the ones she credits to her knack for finding sales, were purchased with dividends from my contracts. And then there is the house, the sprawling, beautiful colonial I grew up in, the house my parents still live in, the house I just spent the last 8 months renovating. It started with a small leak in the roof. That leak became a full roof replacement. The roof replacement revealed structural issues, which led to a complete kitchen gut. Eleanor decided that as long as we were making a mess, she needed new hardwood floors and a new HVAC system and a new master bathroom. The final tally, not including my own labor, which I never charge for, came to $61,800. $61,800 of my money. paid directly to suppliers, to my crew for their overtime, for high-end materials that my mother insisted upon, all of it logged meticulously in my company's accounting software. They never offered to pay. They never signed a contract. It was family. To them, my company, Stewart Works Build Coke, is not a legitimate, tax-paying, payroll-making business. It's my cute workshop, my little hobby. They talk about my work with the same indulgent, faintly embarrassed tone they might use if I'd opened an Etsy shop for knitted cat hats. It is dirty, unfeminine, and a constant, low-grade disappointment. The worst part is not the condescension, it's the public humiliation. Dressed up as a joke, we were at dinner just last month, at a restaurant I was paying for. Colton was bragging about a case he'd won. All polished words and smug confidence. My mother, flushed with wine, turned her bright, brittle smile on me. "Addison, dear," she said, her voice loud enough for the next table to hear. "All this, construction, it's so physical. Who is going to marry a girl who works in construction?" The air went still. I saw Tessa hide a smile behind her wine glass, exchanging a knowing glance with Colton. My father, Gabe, gave a tiny, pained chuckle and became intensely interested in the pattern on his plate. He didn't say a word. He never says a word. Everyone laughed. A light, tinkling sound that felt like broken glass in my chest. I didn't respond. I just picked up my own glass of water, took a slow, deliberate sip, and felt the familiar, cold click in my brain. I mentally added the cost of this dinner to the running total. The facts were my only armor. The numbers didn't lie. $61,800, plus airfare, plus handbags, plus this $400 dinner, which brings me to tonight. It's freezing. The kind of damp Graybridge cold that seeps right into your bones. I'm at my parents' house, on a ladder, finishing the one job my father specifically asked me to do, hang the Christmas lights. My crew could have done it in an hour, but he asked for me. It's our one tradition. The house looks beautiful. The new slate gray paint is perfect against the white trim. The new roofline is crisp. My work is flawless. I'm fastening the last string of lights to the gutter near the living room window. The window is cracked, just an inch, letting a slice of warm, golden light and the murmur of voices spill into the dark. I can smell the pine from the tree inside and the faint, sweet scent of my mother's perfume. I'm about to climb down when I hear Tessa's voice, low and sharp, stripped of its usual honeyed tone. "It's just better to wait until after the holidays. Colton, it's cleaner." I freeze. My glove, holding a plastic clip, hovers over the gutter. Colton's voice, smooth and reasonable. "The optics are better. I agree." We let her finish the patio paperwork, finalize the last payment to her vendor, and then we're done. A pause, then Tessa again, and her voice has a cruel, amused lilt that I've never heard directed at me. "God, can you imagine the drama? Eleanor is right. It's time." My blood turns to slush. I stay perfectly, agonizingly still. My mother, Eleanor, speaks. "The paperwork is almost done. Tessa, your father and I updated the will last week. Colton was so helpful. It's all taken care of." A peal of laughter. It's Tessa, a bright, genuine laugh, and it's the ugliest sound I've ever heard. "He already has the papers drawn up to cut Addison out," Tessa says, still giddy. "Once the house is officially clear, it's done. She won't have a leg to stand on." I lean my head against the cold aluminum of the ladder. The colored lights in my hand feel impossibly heavy. They think I'm just the girl on the ladder. They think I'm just the cute workshop. They think I'm the fool who paid $61,800 to renovate a house I'm about to be cut out of. I take a slow, deep breath. The cold air burns my lungs. I clip the last light into place. My movements precise, automatic. I don't shake. I don't cry. I just start planning. My hand, holding the last plastic clip, is frozen in midair. The cold metal of the ladder bites through my jeans, rooting me to the spot, inside the warm, golden light of the living room. The conversation continues, oblivious. Colton is just so smart about these things. Tessa's voice, sharp and conspiratorial, cuts through the glass. He said that after the patio is completely finished, after that final inspection is signed off, the inheritance transfer is clean, the title is clear, she legally has no claim on the improvements, even if she wanted to make trouble. It's just tidier. My mother, Eleanor, replies. Her voice is cool, satisfied, like she's just secured a winning bid at a silent auction. I already updated the will. Darling, your father and I signed it last week. Colton reviewed every page. It's all going to you. Everything, as it should be. Everything. The word hangs in the frigid air. I stay perfectly still. My breath fogs in front of my face, a small, white cloud that vanishes. Inside, I hear the distinct, sharp clink of ice cubes settling in a heavy glass. Someone is having a celebratory drink. Then, the words that stop my heart. It's Colton. His voice is smooth, laced with a casual, clinical disdain. It's honestly better for her. Really. She's obviously struggling. Tessa, didn't you say she slept in her car last week? A beat of silence. Then, Tessa's laugh. It's high and sharp. The same laugh I heard at the restaurant. A laugh that strips paint. Oh my God. Yes. Can you believe it? She told someone at the diner, apparently trying to get sympathy from Dad. How pathetic. Like, get a hotel room if your business is doing so badly. Slept in my car. The lie detonates in my chest. A concussion of cold fury. I know exactly the moment they are twisting. It was 3 weeks ago. A brutal commercial inspection ran until 2 a.m, and I had a 5 a.m. concrete pour for a different client 2 hours away. It was a logistical impossibility to drive all the way home and back. I'd napped for 2 hours in my truck at the job site. It was a decision based on efficiency, exhaustion, and the responsibilities of a business owner on a tight deadline. They took that fact a moment of pure grit and filed it down into a shiv. They were painting me as a vagrant, a failure, a charity case who slept in her vehicle while I was actively funding their vacations and rebuilding their home from the studs out. This isn't just about inheritance. It's not just greed. It is active, calculated character assassination. They are building a narrative to justify the theft, poisoning the well to anyone who would listen, making me look unstable and pathetic. My hand finally starts to shake. Not with fear, not with sadness. It's rage. A pure, cold, industrial-grade rage that starts in my stomach and radiates outward, making my fingers tingle. I force my glove to grip the plastic light clip, pressing it hard against the aluminum gutter until my knuckles ache. I will not drop it. I will not make a sound. I focus on the details, the sensory anchors. The scent of fresh pine from the tree inside wafts out the window, mixing with the metallic smell of the cold air. It's the scent of Christmas, of family. It now smells like accelerant. From the kitchen, I can hear the subtle, rhythmic thunk of a knife on a cutting board. Eleanor, prepping for dinner, as if this is just any other Tuesday. The old house settles around them. The wooden stairs in the main hall let out a long, familiar groan. Someone is coming down. I hear my father's muffled voice, indistinct, questioning. Then Eleanor's, sharp and dismissive. It's fine, Gabe. We're just talking about the holidays. Go check on the roast. Would you, don't let it dry out? He is there. He is in the house. And as always, he is retreating, leaving me to the wolves. The blueprint of their plan snaps into focus, as clear as if Colton himself had unrolled it on my dashboard. The patio. That was the last piece, the final phase of the renovation. I'd just paid the deposit on the bluestone pavers out of my own account last week. The delivery was scheduled for Monday. They needed that patio finished. They needed the property value maximized. They needed my company, my money, and my labor to complete the asset they intended to steal. Once that last paver was set, once my crew had packed up, then they would serve the papers. Then they would cut me off. This entire thing reeks of Colton. This is not just a greedy, emotional grab by my mother and sister. This is structured. This is legal maneuvering. The updated will. The timing calibrated to the project's completion. The slander campaign to discredit me beforehand. This is Ash Alder LLP, bringing their corporate savagery home for Christmas. Tessa speaks again, her voice suddenly laced with a thin wire of concern. But what if she makes a scene? You know how she gets when she thinks something is unfair. She won't, Eleanor says, her voice absolute, final. She'll be embarrassed. And besides, we would look terrible kicking her out right before the holidays. We wait. We have a lovely Christmas. We thank her for the lights. And in January, Colton handles the trusts. It will be quiet. We'd look terrible kicking her out before the holidays. It wasn't morality. It wasn't love. It was optics. It was what the neighbors would think. They were scheduling my excommunication between the Christmas ham and the New Year's champagne. The cold precision I felt earlier clicks back into place, overriding the rage. The shaking stops. My hand is rock steady. Tears are unproductive. Tears are what they expect from the emotional daughter. What I need is a punch list. What I need is a timeline. What I need is a bill of materials. I carefully, quietly, clip the last light into place, the final bulb on the string. It glows a defiant, blood red against the darkness. I stay on the ladder for another full minute, letting the cold seep back in, sharpening my focus. I pull my phone from my breast pocket. My heavy work glove makes it clumsy, so I rip it off with my teeth. My bare fingers are instantly numb, stinging in the freezing air. But I don't care. I open my notes app, a fresh, blank note. I type the date. I type the time. I type the address, 124 Cedar Ridge Lane. I begin logging the data. Key quotes. Updated the will. Everything to you. Eleanor S. He said after the patio is finished, the inheritance transfer is clean. Tessa S. Slept in her car last week. Colton A. Defamation. We'd look terrible kicking her out before the holidays. In January. Colton handles the trusts. Eleanor S. I log every detail, the sound of the creaking stair, confirming Gabe's presence, the clinking glass, the specific, actionable mention of the patio, the precise, weaponized lie about my truck. I am a builder documenting a site inspection before a demolition. This is my evidence log. My phone screen glows in the dark, illuminating my face. I look at the house, my house, the house I have poured my sweat, my time, and $61,800 into. The new roof is perfect. The paint is flawless. The lights are hung in a perfectly straight, architecturally sound line. I climb down the ladder, my movements economical and silent. I don't make a sound. I secure the ladder to the side of the garage, coiling the extension cord with practiced, efficient loops. I walk back to the front porch. I can see them clearly through the window now. Gathered in the living room, Tessa is showing my mother something on her phone, both of them smiling. Colton is swirling his drink. My father is nowhere to be seen. I stand on the porch for a moment, just out of the circle of light. They are planning to set my life on fire. They seem to inopportunely forget that I am the one who knows how to build, and I am the one who knows how to tear things down. I pull my glove back on. I look at the final string of lights I just hung, the ones framing the very window they conspired behind. I smile. It is not a Christmas smile. It is not a family smile. It is the smile of a general who has just intercepted the enemy's unencrypted battle plans. It's a smile that promises a long, cold, and meticulously documented winter. I turn my back on the warm, golden light of the house and walk into the darkness toward my truck, my work boots crunching on the frozen gravel. The war has begun. I didn't sleep. The rage that had solidified in my chest was a far more effective fuel than caffeine. I drove past my parents' house, the house I had rebuilt, and didn't even slow down. I went straight to the Stewart Works office, a small, leased space above a quiet bookstore. The smell of sawdust and fresh coffee from my own machine was the only comfort I needed. I sat down at my desk, pulled out my ledgers, and opened the accounting software. The night was still. The only sound was the click of my mechanical keyboard, a rhythmic, angry tapping in the quiet. This was not an emotional inventory. This was an audit. I started with the kitchen. Custom-built shaker cabinets. Maple, painted in a shade of white my mother had changed her mind about 3 times. $9,400. That didn't include the quartz countertops or the backsplash. I moved to the roof, a complete tear-off. 30-year architectural shingles. Ice and water shield on all eaves. New flashing around the chimney I had personally inspected. $14,600. The HVAC system. A high-efficiency unit because Eleanor had complained the old one was too noisy and terrible for her allergies. $12,300. Including the new ductwork, the list went on. Each line item a small, neat betrayal. The new hardwood flooring that replaced the dated carpet, $7,000. The complete electrical upgrade to handle the new appliances, $5,500. The interior and exterior paint, the new lighting fixtures, the guest bathroom vanity. The total came to $61,800, and that was just the hard costs. The money paid directly from my business account to suppliers and my crew. It did not include a single cent for my time, my project management, or the sleepless nights I'd spent scheduling inspections. For every single line item, I had a corresponding file. I pulled them from my cabinet, the supplier invoices, the scanned copies of the checks I had signed, the bank transfer confirmations, the email chains with vendors, all of which started with per Eleanor Stewart's request. There was no formal contract. That was the first, sick-to-my-stomach realization. It was family. You don't sign contracts with family. That's what they count on. That's the gap they built the trap in. But I am a professional. I may have been a fool in my personal life, but I am a meticulous business owner. I didn't have a contract, but for every single phase of the project, I had a project phase completion form. From the roof to the kitchen to the HVAC, I had a 1-page document that detailed the work completed, and at the bottom of each page was a line where my mother, Eleanor Stewart, had signed her name, accepting the work. It wasn't a contract, but it was an acknowledgement. It was proof. It was a paper trail. I began the transfer. I scanned every invoice, every bank statement, every signed completion form. I created a new, encrypted folder. I backed it up to my secure cloud server. Then I copied the entire folder to a brand new solid-state drive. Then, just to be certain, I copied it again to a small, nondescript USB stick, cloud, SSD, USB, 3 copies, the holy trinity of "you will not erase me." By 6 a.m., the sun was a pale, gray smear over Graybridge, and I had a meeting, not with a client, not with a supplier. I was in the waiting room of Marin Doyle by 8:30 a.m., coffee in hand. Her office wasn't in the charming, restored Victorian part of town. It was in a boring, modern glass building near the courthouse. Marin Doyle didn't do family law in the traditional sense. She did asset litigation. She was precise, expensive, and had a reputation for not blinking. She walked into the conference room, not a minute late, and didn't small talk. She was in her 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. "Ms. Stewart, you said on the phone this was an urgent matter of asset dispute and potential fraud. You have 30 minutes of my time. Please begin." I didn't give her the emotional story. I didn't talk about Christmas lights or feelings. I handed her the solid-state drive. My company, Stewart Works Build Co., performed a significant renovation on a property at 124 Cedar Ridge Lane. The work was completed in phases over 8 months. The clients are my parents, Gabe and Eleanor Stewart. The total hard cost, not including my labor or management fees, was $61,800. I have itemized invoices, proof of payment to all vendors, and signed completion forms for each phase of the project, signed by Eleanor Stewart. I paused, and then I delivered the critical data. Last night, I overheard the clients, along with my sister, Tessa, and her husband, Colton, who is an attorney at Ash and Alder, discussing a plan to remove me from my parents' will and finalize an inheritance transfer, timed precisely to the completion of the renovation. The goal, in their words, is to cut me off so I won't have a leg to stand on after the patio is finished. They intend to let me pay for and install this final piece, and then serve me with the legal papers in January. Marin watched me. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes were quick. She plugged the SSD into her laptop. She was silent for a full 5 minutes, clicking through the files, the invoices, the bank transfers, the neat, tidy signature of Eleanor Stewart. Finally, she looked up. "The house is in your parents' names, correct?" "Yes," I said. "Then a direct claim on the property is difficult," she said, her voice flat. "Your name isn't on the deed. You're not on the mortgage. Any inheritance is their discretion. They can write you out of the will. That's not illegal. It's just cruel." "I know that," I said, my voice tight. "That's not what I'm here for." A very small, very fast smile touched Marin's lips. "Good. Because while a direct claim is messy, what you have here is a different kind of weapon." She turned her monitor toward me. She had pulled up the Graybridge County Municipal Code. "You are not their daughter in this matter. Ms. Stewart, you are a contractor. You are a business. And your business, Stewart Works Build Co., has not been paid. Graybridge County has a very robust, very aggressive mechanics lien statute." She explained it. A mechanics lien. It wasn't about inheritance. It wasn't about who my parents loved more. It was a cold, hard business tool. If a contractor provides labor and materials to improve a property, and the homeowner does not pay, the contractor can file a public notice, a lien. That lien attaches to the property deed. It gets recorded with the county. "It means," Marin said, "they can't sell the house. They can't refinance it. They can't transfer the title to Tessa and Colton's trust. They can't do anything until your bill is paid. It freezes the asset completely, and it's public record, for everyone in Graybridge to see." "What are the conditions?" I asked. "You need to prove the work was done." "You've done that," she said, tapping the screen showing the signed forms. "You need a complete, itemized bill. You've done that. You must serve them with a formal notice of intent to file and give them a short window to pay, and you must file the lien within 90 days of the last day of work." My blood ran cold. The last day of work. They're waiting for me to finish the patio. "Exactly," Marin said. "They are literally building your case for you. They are confirming the work is ongoing. The 90-day clock hasn't even started." We sat in silence for a moment, the strategy forming in the air between us. "We don't target your father," Marin said, her voice decisive. "In my experience, there's always a heart and there's a head. Your father is the heart. The head is Colton, your brother-in-law. He's the one at Ash and Alder. He's the one who thinks he's being clever with the timing. He's the one we're going to dismantle. Tessa and your mother are just greedy. He's the architect." She was right. My father was a shield of inaction, but Colton was the one forging the sword. "So what's the plan?" I asked. Marin pulled out a legal pad. "We create our own timeline. Step 1. You continue to document every phone call, every text, every email. From this moment on, you are building a file. Step 2. We prepare the notice of intent to file, a full itemized bill for the $61,800, plus a standard 20% project management fee, which is industry standard. That brings the total to just over $74,000. We'll have it ready to go. Step 3. The moment that patio is done and they don't pay, we serve them. Step 4. If they don't pay within the 10-day notice period, we file. We hit the county record system." She leaned forward, and then, if we need to, we move to Step 5. We accidentally leak the public filing to the Graybridge Gazette, right when your mother is hosting her Christmas charity drive. We'll see how What the neighbors think feels then. It was brutal. It was cold. It was perfect. My name, I said. I don't want my name on the initial notice. They'll see it coming. They won't, Marin said. You're going to sign a limited power of attorney. All notices will come from my firm. They will be from Counsel for Stewart Works Build Co. They won't know it's you talking. They'll know it's me. I stood up. The fog of rage and betrayal was gone, replaced by the clean, sharp lines of a plan. I had a blueprint. I had my tools. I signed the paper, giving Marin Doyle power of attorney. I paid her retainer from my business account. I walked out of the glass building into the bright, cold morning. I was no longer a daughter waiting for an inheritance. I was a creditor. And I was coming to collect. The mechanic's lien was the structural plan. It was the foundation, the load-bearing walls, and the roof. It was Marin Doyle's world of affidavits, statutes, and county filings. It was a good plan, a solid plan. But I am a builder. I know that a house is more than its frame. The true life of a house, the part that makes it dangerous, is the wiring, the plumbing, the invisible network running behind the pristine drywall, the parts that can burn it down or flood it. Marin's plan was the hammer. I needed a scalpel. Documentation, Marin had said. Is everything? I took her advice more literally than she intended. I went online, not to a local shop, but to a specialty electronics supplier based in Nevada. I bought 2 voice-activated micro-recorders. They were advertised for journalists and students, but I knew what they were for. They were smaller than a coat button. Their batteries lasted 72 hours on standby. They were perfect, silent, digital ears. I needed a reason to get into the house, alone. My own work provided the cover, the patio, the final piece of their puzzle was also mine. I called my mother, my voice crisp and professional. Eleanor, I'm scheduling the patio excavation for next week, but before I close out the file on the internal renovations, I need to conduct a final warranty service check. I have to inspect the HVAC duct seals and check the tension on the new cabinet hardware. It's standard procedure. I'll be in and out. Warranty? Her voice was dismissive, as if I were a plumber she'd called from the phone book. Fine, Addison. I have my committee lunch on Thursday at noon. The house will be empty. Just let yourself in. She didn't even want to be there. Perfect. That Thursday. I parked my truck in their driveway. Just as I had 100 times before, I carried my large red metal toolbox. It looked like any other day on the job. But inside, under a set of wrenches, were the 2 tiny black squares. My heart was a low, vibrating engine in my chest. This was not me. I build, I don't bug. But they had turned my work, my creation, into a weapon against me. I was just turning it back on them. The house was silent, empty, and cold. Every surface I had installed the gleaming quartz, the smooth maple floors. The flawless paint felt sterile, like a museum. I was a ghost walking through my own portfolio. I had a legal justification, one I had rehearsed for Marin. I was not placing these in private spaces, like a bedroom or a bathroom. I was a contractor, performing a post-construction audio diagnostic in common areas to check for settling noise and system integrity. It was a thin, legal-sounding lie built on a technical truth. The first one went into the living room. This was where I had heard them through the window. This was their war room. I went straight to the custom-built bookshelf I had designed and installed beside the fireplace. It was my own work. I knew its hollow spaces. I pulled out a thick, unread volume of presidential biographies. My hands were steady. I pressed the small activation switch. A single blue light blinked once and died. It was live. I tucked it deep into the shadow of the shelf. Behind the books, aimed directly at the cluster of armchairs, it was invisible. The second one was for the kitchen. This was Eleanor's command center. This was where she stood, leaning against the island, co-managing the family's decline with Tessa over the phone. I looked at the custom-built ventilation hood over the stove. I had installed it myself. It had a decorative wooden shell. I ran my hand along the top edge, just under the crown molding. There was a small 3-inch gap between the shell and the ceiling, a shadow deep enough to hide a secret. I didn't even need a ladder. I reached up, my fingers finding the ledge, and placed the second device. It sat in the darkness, aimed down at the island, waiting. I spent the next 45 minutes actually working. I opened the HVAC vent, took a picture for my file, and tightened a hinge on a cabinet. I left a legitimate, provable trace of warranty work. Then I packed my toolbox and left, locking the door behind me. The house was no longer just a house. It was a trap. The wait was agonizing. I had to time my retrievals with Eleanor's social calendar. Twice that first week, I forgot a tool, or had to double-check a measurement, swapping the memory cards while my crew was outside making noise. The first 2 weeks were useless, hours of my mother complaining about the caterer for the Christmas gala. My father shuffling in, asking if the mail had come. The background noise of their lives. I was beginning to think it was a wasted effort. Then, 3 weeks after I placed the devices, I retrieved the card from the kitchen. It was the Tuesday night before Thanksgiving. I knew Tessa and Colton were there for dinner. I sat in my cold truck, parked down the street, and put the audio file on my laptop. I put in my earbuds. The first sound was the distinct, high-pitched clink of crystal glasses, an audio anchor. I noted the time. Then, Tessa's voice, giddy with wine. "Seriously, Mom, it's just perfect. Colton's final transfer of benefits file is a work of art. It's like legal poetry." "He's brilliant," Eleanor's voice, slick with admiration. "He thought of everything. Your father and I signed the final trust documents this morning." A pause. Then, Colton's smooth reptilian voice. "It's just risk management. Eleanor, we're insulating the core assets from any potential, future, frivolous claims." Frivolous claims? He meant me. "Oh, she won't dare," Eleanor laughed. That bright, brittle sound. "She's too proud of her little workshop. She wouldn't know where to begin. After January, she won't get a single cent. It's all protected." Then, the explosion. The one sentence I hadn't known I was listening for. Colton, his voice lower, more conspiratorial. "And you're sure you moved the liquidity out of the main account, the one at Graybridge Mutual?" "Yes, just like you told me," Eleanor said, almost bored. "The big one. It's all tucked away in that new account at Harbor Ridge Credit Union. Nobody will even think to look there. Honestly, this is all so tedious. Tessa, tell me about the gala dresses." My blood went cold. Then it went hot. Harbor Ridge Credit Union. This wasn't just about the house. This wasn't just about the will. They were actively moving liquid assets, hiding money. This was conspiracy. This was active, calculated fraud. I sat in my truck for a full 10 minutes, the sound of my own breathing harsh in my ears. The recording played on, dissolving into mundane chatter about dresses and appetizers. I drove to my office, the world outside my windshield feeling blurry and distant. I sat at my desk, and I transcribed. I am meticulous in my work. I was meticulous in this. I typed every word. I added timestamps, using the clinking crystal glasses as my starting point. 1408. Sound of 2 crystal glasses clinking. Tessa S. Colton's final transfer of benefits file. Eleanor S. Won't get a single cent. It's all protected. Colton A. Move the liquidity. Eleanor S. Tucked away in that new account at Harbor Ridge Credit Union. I saved the file. I encrypted it. I saved the audio, the transcript, and the photos of my warranty work to the same USB drive I had given to Marin. I was in her office at 8 a.m. the next morning. I didn't have an appointment. I didn't care. I placed the USB drive on her desk. "You need to listen to this and read the transcript. It's from the kitchen, time-stamped." Marin didn't ask how I got it. She didn't have to. She read the transcript, her face a perfect, lawyerly blank. Then she put in her own earbuds and listened to the audio. Her eyes closed. When she opened them, they were not blank. They were glittering. "This is not a gray area, Addison," she said, her voice a low, furious hiss. This is it. This is the ball game. What is it? It's called fraudulent conveyance, Marin said, standing up and beginning to pace. Colton, an officer of the court, is actively advising your mother to hide assets in anticipation of a future claim, our claim. He's making her judgment-proof. This isn't just unethical, it's a conspiracy to defraud a creditor. You, Stewart Works Build Co. She finally stopped pacing and looked at me. The lien was a good plan. It would have gotten your $61,000 back. This, she tapped the transcript, this is leverage. This is enough to destroy his professional reputation. This is enough to get the Bar Association involved. This opens a secondary legal door, a door to punitive damages. She smiled, a thin, sharp, dangerous expression. They just gave us the keys to the whole kingdom. We just have to let them finish building their gallows before we spring the trap. It was Tessa's 30th birthday, and the party was being held at the house, my house, the one I had paid for in materials, in sweat, and in blood. I arrived late. The party was in full swing, a glittering facade of Greybridge society. My mother, Eleanor, was in her element, her voice a high, tinkling bell as she moved among her friends, accepting compliments on the new decor. The new floors gleamed under the recessed lighting I had installed. The new paint was a perfect, neutral backdrop for her performance. The guests were all cashmere and quiet jewelry. I walked in wearing a charcoal gray wool suit. It was custom-tailored, sharp-shouldered, and utterly out of place. It was not a party dress. It was armor. It was the suit of a person who sits at the head of a boardroom table, not one who gets scraps from it. I was carrying a slim leather tablet case. I saw them clustered near the new fireplace, the one with the mantle I had sourced myself. My father, Gabe, looking uncomfortable in a new sweater, my mother, flushed with her own success, and Tessa, the birthday girl, holding court with her husband, the architect of my ruin, Colton. Colton saw me first. His eyes ran over my suit, a flicker of amused disdain in his glance. He raised his glass of champagne. "Addison," he said, his voice loud enough for the circle to hear. "Good of you to make it, taking a break from the workshop." He smiled, a thin, polished expression. "You know, I keep telling Tessa, you've got the hard part down, but you'll never make real money until you get out of construction and into real estate. That's where the real money is." He was half joking, baiting me, casting me as the blue-collar grunt in his sophisticated world. The circle chuckled, a soft, polite sound. I walked toward them, not smiling. I set my tablet case on the coffee table. I picked up a glass of water, not champagne. "Actually, Colton," I said, my voice cutting through their polite murmur. "You've inspired me. I'm very interested in assets and property value, and in truth," Eleanor's smile tightened. "Addison, darling, don't be dramatic. It's a party." "It is," I agreed. "And it's a birthday, and a time for family. I'd like to make a toast." This, they understood. A toast was part of the performance. They raised their glasses. Tessa looked expectant. I raised my glass of water. "To family," I said, my voice clear and steady. I looked at each of them, at my father's averted eyes, at my mother's brittle smile, at Tessa's entitled pout, at Colton's smug confidence. And to the truth? I took a sip of water. The toast was a flat, strange thing. The group around them shifted, sensing an off-key note. "In fact," I continued, setting the glass down and picking up my tablet, "I put together a little family presentation for Tessa's birthday, a walk down memory lane." "Oh, Addison, a slideshow. How quaint?" Tessa said, already bored and looking at her phone. "Something like that," I said. I turned to the large, 70-inch smart television I had installed over the fireplace, the one I had connected to the house's new smart hub, the one my tablet was already paired with. I swiped my finger, the screen flickered, and the festive, crackling fireplace screensaver was replaced by a simple, black screen. "What is this?" Eleanor said, her voice sharp with annoyance. Just a recording, I said. Audio only. I find it so important to remember what's been said. I pressed the play icon. The room was silent. And then, from the television's high-fidelity speakers, my mother's voice filled the living room. It was not her party voice. It was cold and clear and conspiratorial. I already updated the will. Darling, your father and I signed it last week. It's all going to you, everything, as it should be. The air in the room didn't just go still. It was sucked into a vacuum. I watched their faces. This was the moment. This was the fulcrum. Eleanor's face didn't just go pale. It went gray. Her hand, the one holding the champagne flute, froze in midair. She looked like a statue of herself. Tessa didn't gasp. She just deflated. The bright, birthday girl energy vanished. Her eyes darted to her phone, her thumb starting to scroll. A reflexive, terrified tick. She was looking for an exit, a distraction, anything but the reality of the sound in the room. Colton, he was the most interesting. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. But his hand, the one holding his own glass, stopped. It just stopped, an inch from his lips, as he processed the new, catastrophic data. He was calculating, not reacting. Then his voice, his own voice, filled the room, smooth and condescending. Won't get a single cent. It's all protected. A woman in the corner of the room, one of my mother's friends, let out a tiny, high-pitched gasp. It was the only sound. Before anyone could form a word, before the ice cube of shock could melt into a puddle of anger, I swiped the screen. The black audio file was gone. It was replaced by a crisp, white spreadsheet. My company logo, Stewart Works Build Co., was in the top left corner. The title was Project File 124 Cedar Ridge Lane, Statement of Costs. And there it was, the itemized list. Kitchen renovation cabinets, counters, $9,400. Roofing architectural shingles, labor $14,600. System, high efficiency, ductwork, $12,300. Hardwood flooring materials, install $7,000. The list went on and on. Beside each line item, a new image appeared: a scanned bank transfer, a cashed check, an invoice from a supplier, my money, my account, my signature, paying for their house. Addison, my father, Gabe, said. His voice was a dry, scraping sound. He was trembling. Addison, what is this? It's the bill, Dad, I said, my voice quiet. But it carried in the dead silent room. I swiped again. A new screen. This one was a screenshot of an email. The sender Colton, Ashalder, com. The recipient Eleanor, Stuart Graybridge, com. The subject line, Re the Jan timeline. The guests could read the highlighted text as clearly as I could. The timeline is secure. The key is to keep the asset Addison engaged by temporarily placating the creditor until she's paid in full for the patio installation. Once her work is complete and her final receipts are logged, we can file the transfer and she will have no further claim. The less she knows, the cleaner the break. Asset, creditor. Colton finally moved. He set his glass down. The small clack of it hitting the marble was like a gunshot. This is taken out of context. This is privileged communication. Is it Colton? I asked. It looks like you. An attorney at Ash Alder, using your company email to plan a conspiracy to defraud a creditor. Me. That's what Marin Doyle calls it. Anyway. His face went ashen. I had named my lawyer. The game had changed. Is this true? It was my father's voice, but it wasn't the dry, scraping sound from before. It was loud. He was shaking, his hand pointing not at the screen, but at my mother. Eleanor Colton, is this true? Eleanor was mute. She was a porcelain doll, shattered and frozen. She stared at the screen, her eyes wide with a horror that was not moral, but social. She had been exposed. Her friends, her committee, her audience, they were all here, watching her execution. Tessa was crying now. Silent, ugly tears, her face buried in her hands. "Is it true?" my father yelled again, his voice cracking. Eleanor did not answer. She couldn't. "I guess she can't answer that," I said to my father. I swiped the tablet one last time. The final image filled the screen. It was not a spreadsheet. It was not an email. It was a cold, formal legal document. The letterhead read, Law Offices of Marin Doyle, P.L.L.C. The title was large and clear. Official Notice of Intent to File Mechanics Lien. And at the bottom, the total, the $61,800, plus my standard 20% project management fee, plus interest, amount due, $74,160. There was no screaming, there was no shouting, there was no confrontation. There was just a profound, absolute, and terrifying silence, the sound of a glass wall shattering, the pieces hanging in the air for one agonizing second before they rained down. The party was over. I picked up my tablet. I slid it back into its leather case. I looked at the room, at the frozen figures of my family. "Happy birthday, Tessa," I said, and I walked out. I didn't just walk out. I stood by the front door, my hand on the new, solid core door I had installed, and I watched the silence shatter. Colton was the first to reboot. His lawyer brain visibly clicked back online, moving from shock to damage control. He took a half step toward me, his hands raised in a placating, condescending gesture, as if I were a hysterical client. "Addison," he said, his voice a low, reasonable hum. "This is an extreme reaction. You've clearly taken some things out of context. That email, the one from your Ash and Alder account," I cut him off. My voice was quiet, but it sliced through the room. "Yes, it was poorly phrased," he conceded, trying to smile, trying to charm his way out of a federal crime. I was stressed. We were all stressed about the finances. I misspoke. It was just lawyer talk. "Lawyer talk for fraudulent conveyance?" I asked. His smile vanished. Tessa was next. She scrambled up from the sofa, her face a streaked, blotchy mess of birthday girl mascara. "Addie, stop. Please, just stop." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "You don't understand. You're twisting everything. We were just worried about you. That's all. You misunderstood." I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at her face. The lie was so reflexive, so deep. She almost believed it herself. "I misunderstood," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I misunderstood the audio recording of you all in the kitchen. I misunderstood the specific, time-stamped mention of the Harbor Ridge Credit Union. I misunderstood the phrase, 'She won't get a single cent.' No, Tessa, I have the date. I have the time. I have your voice. Let go of me." She recoiled, as if I had burned her. But the real explosion came from the center of the room. My father. He hadn't moved. He was still staring at the blank television screen, his face a mask of gray disbelief. He turned, not to me, but to my mother. Eleanor was frozen, her socialite smile gone, replaced by the terrified, slack-jawed expression of a woman who had just seen her entire world, the world of appearances she had so carefully curated, evaporate in real time. "Eleanor," Gabe said. His voice was a dry rattle. He asked her, "I'm asking you, is it true?" Eleanor didn't answer. She was looking past him, at her friends, the guests. They were the real jury, and they were already moving. It was a quiet, polite stampede. "Oh, Eleanor, look at the time. I must... Such a memorable party, Tessa. We really must be going." They were a tide of cashmere and pearls, flowing to the door, grabbing their coats, their faces averted, their eyes wide with the delicious, horrified gossip they would be dining on for weeks. They were my mother's worst nightmare, come to life. "Eleanor!" my father roared. I had never heard him raise his voice above a disappointed murmur in my entire life. It was a terrible, raw sound. She flinched, but still. She said nothing. She couldn't. She just stared at her audience as they fled. He saw it. He saw her silence for what it was, a confession. He didn't say another word. He just turned. He walked out of the living room, past me, his face blank. He walked up the stairs, his footsteps heavy on the new wood I had laid. And then, a sound that House had never heard, the slam of his bedroom door. It echoed through the open-plan living space, a final, definitive crack. The sound of a man who had finally, decades too late, chosen a side. The party was over. The house was a tomb. I walked out in the middle of the guest exodus, slipping through the quiet chaos of their departure. No one said goodbye. I got into my truck and locked the doors. The cold of the steering wheel was a comfort. I sat for a long, full minute. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. The rage had burned away, leaving something cold and clean and structural. I felt light, the weight of their expectations, the crushing burden of their family tax. The $61,800 of my life I had poured into that house, it was gone. I felt empty, but it was a good, clean emptiness. It was the feeling of a site that has just been demolished, cleared, and is finally ready for a new, stable foundation. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were steady. First, an email to Marin Doyle. The subject was simple: proceed. I attached the entire, consolidated evidence packet, the audio files, the time-stamped transcripts, the high-resolution screenshots of Colton's emails, the final, itemized ledger. My message was short. Presentation was a success. They have been served. Please file the 10-day notice tomorrow morning. The kitchen audio, File 4A, contains evidence of fraudulent conveyance. Use it at your discretion. I hit send. Then, a second email. This one was to a new, encrypted address I had created. The recipient was a blind box email for a local investigative journalist at the Graybridge Gazette, a man who had a reputation for digging into the ethics of the town's elite. This was not blind revenge. This was not a daughter lashing out. This was a CEO making a calculated move. They had used public image. Optics, as their primary weapon. I was simply taking it away from them. This was about discipline, not drama. To him. I did not send the audio. That was for Marin's legal. Gray area maneuvering. I sent something cleaner. I sent the high-resolution screenshot of Colton's email, the one from his official ashalder.com address, and I attached a copy of the draft. Notice of intent to file lien, with the $74,000 total clearly visible. The subject tip: Ash Alder LLP. Ethics violation. The body to whom it may concern. It appears a senior attorney at Ash Alder, Colton last name redacted, is using his corporate email to advise family members on how to hide assets and conspire to defraud a local contractor, Stewart Works Build Co. The contractor is filing the attached public lien tomorrow. Might be worth asking Ash Alder if this is their official company policy. A concerned member of the Graybridge business community. I hit send. The charges were set. The detonation was now on a timer. I drove home and slept on my own couch for 6 uninterrupted hours. I woke up at 5 a.m., as I always do. My phone was a smoking ruin. There were 19 missed calls. There were 34 text messages. They were all from Eleanor. I scrolled through them, a clinical study in manipulative desperation. 3:12 a.m. Addison, I cannot believe what you have done. You have destroyed this family. 3:15 a.m. In front of our friends, at your sister's birthday, you are a cruel, selfish child. 3:30 a.m. Your father has locked himself in the bedroom and will not speak to me. This is your fault. Then, the shift, the pivot from rage to bargaining. 4:05 a.m. Please, darling, pick up the phone. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. We can talk about this. Come home. I'll make you breakfast. 4:30 a.m. Addison, I am your mother. You owe me your respect. You will call off this lawyer immediately. And finally, the threat. 4:45 a.m. If you file that lien, you are no longer our daughter. You are disowned. You will never see a penny. You will be dead to us. You will regret this for the rest of your empty, lonely life." I read the last message, and for the first time, I smiled. A real smile. It was the lightest I had felt in years. I didn't reply. I just opened my contacts. Eleanor Stewart, block number. Tessa Stewart, block number. Colton A., block number. The silence that followed was beautiful. A new text message appeared, a single one, from a number I had not blocked. My father. It was one line. "I am so sorry. I need to see the truth. All of it." I stared at it. "I need the truth." He had spent a lifetime avoiding it. I didn't reply to him, either. Not yet. I got up, made coffee, and went to my office. The smell of sawdust and wood glue was my anchor. My foreman, Luis, was there, loading equipment. "Morning, boss," he said. "Crew's ready to start the excavation for the patio job at your folks' place." "No," I said. My voice was clear and carried in the morning air. "That job is on indefinite hold. Call the supplier, cancel the bluestone delivery, tell them we'll eat the restocking fee, reroute the whole crew to the elementary school project. We're starting Project Lantern a week early." Luis was a good foreman. He just nodded. "You got it, boss." I walked into my office, the office with my ledgers, my client files, my server. My family had always called it my cute workshop. They had never been here, but they were no longer my family. They were adversaries, and I knew, from their own mouths, that they were desperate. My last call of the morning was not to a lawyer, it was to a locksmith. "Stewart Works Build Co. on Main," I said. "I need all the locks on my office suite changed. Today, commercial grade, high-security deadbolts, and I want the file room door reinforced." I hung up and looked at my ledger. I was not a daughter seeking revenge. I was a business owner seeking payment, and I would get it. The locksmith was finishing the new deadbolt on my office door when the email arrived. It was a digital copy of the certified letter Marin Doyle had sent that morning. It was not an emotional plea. It was a tactical strike. The letter was addressed to Mr. Gabe Stewart and Mrs. Eleanor Stewart at 124 Cedar Ridge Lane. It was a formal, final demand for payment for services rendered and materials provided by Stewart Works Build Co. The total was on the front page, in a bold, impossible-to-miss font, $74,160. The terms were simple. They had 10 business days from receipt of the letter to remit payment in full. Failure to do so. The letter explained in cold, clean legal prose would result in the immediate filing of a mechanic's lien with the Graybridge County Registrar of Deeds. The letter explicitly defined what that meant. The lien would be a public record. It would attach to their property deed. It would make it impossible for them to sell the house, refinance the mortgage, or, as the letter pointedly noted, transfer the title to any third party or trust. It was a steel trap, and Marin had just kicked the door shut. This was never about my father. He was a man defined by his avoidance, a professional conflict avoider who had used his good nature as a shield while my mother and sister sharpened their knives. Colton and Tessa were the architects. My father was just the ground they had built their house on. I had insisted on a single specific clause, one that Marin had called a surgical extraction. The letter included an addendum. It stated that the debt could be satisfied in one of two ways. The first was payment in full, the second was a partial payment, specifically from Gabe Stewart, for his 50% share of the debt. This second option, however, was conditional. It had to be accompanied by a notarized affidavit, severing his financial liability in this matter from that of his wife. It was a life raft, a small, one-man raft. I had built it. I had pushed it out onto the water. All he had to do was swim to it. I didn't know if he had the strength. The silence from their house was absolute for 48 hours. I imagined the scene: Eleanor's hysteria, Tessa's tears, Colton's frantic calculations. I imagined the certified mail slip, the green card waiting on the kitchen counter I had installed, radiating poison. The response did not come from a family member. It came, as I knew it would. on the crested letterhead of Ash Alder LLP. It was an email, sent directly to Marin's office. Colton, in his infinite legal wisdom, had decided to play offense. It was a cease and desist. The letter was a masterpiece of arrogant bluster. It accused Stewart Works Buildco and me by association of slander and defamation for the public spectacle at Tessa's birthday. It threatened a massive countersuit for tortious interference with family contracts and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He was trying to bury us in legal smoke. He demanded we retract the notice, issue a full apology, and cease all contact with the Stewart family. I was in Marin's office when she read it aloud. When she finished, she took off her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose, and then she laughed, a sharp, genuine bark of a laugh. "A bluff," she said, tossing the letter onto her desk as if it were garbage. "He's puffing. He's a balloon shark. He's trying to scare the girl in the vest he's so fond of emailing about." "Slander?" I asked, my voice tight. "Truth is an absolute defense, Addison," Marin said, leaning back. "You presented facts. You presented his own email and your own receipts. As for the audio, which he doesn't know we have, it's irrelevant to his claim. He's desperate. He's trying to reframe you as the hysterical, emotional party and himself as the victim. A classic, pathetic move." Marin typed a reply. It took her less than 30 seconds. She sent it to Colton, to his official Ash Alder email address, and she copied the firm's general counsel, Mr. Colton's last name. "My client rejects your baseless claims and your frivolous demands. We will not be retracting our notice. The 10-day clock continues to tick. Govern yourself accordingly." "Now," she said, closing her laptop, "we deploy the second wave. He thinks we're just talking about the $61,000. He thinks this is a petty family squabble over a bill. He doesn't know that we're not just suing for the money, we're coming for his career." The second wave was the audio file, the Harbor Ridge Credit Union bomb. "We can't just send the audio," Marin had advised, "but we can show them the fruits of the audio." She had made one call, to one person, a forensic accountant. It was a simple request. "I suspect a fraudulent transfer of assets from a Graybridge mutual account, funneled through Harbor Ridge Credit Union. I need to know where it landed." It took the accountant less than 24 hours. The money, or a very large portion of it, had not sat in Harbor Ridge for long. It had been moved again, this time as a down payment. A significant 6-figure down payment on a brand new vacation property, a half-built cabin. The Aspen model, in the new, ultra-exclusive Lakeshore Meadow development. The purchase agreement was not in Eleanor's name. It was not in Colton's name. It was filed under Tessa A., Colton's last name. "They were liquidating," I said, the pieces clicking together. The house, the renovations I had paid for, had freed up their cash flow. They were siphoning off the family money, the money I had saved them, the money I had made them, and funneling it into a new asset that was solely in Tessa's name, insulated from any of my future claims, insulated from my father, insulated from anyone. "It's the very definition of fraudulent conveyance," Marin said, her voice grim. "Colton used his legal knowledge to help my mother and sister steal from you, and then used that theft to finance their new life, and they were using your pending patio payment to finish the job. It was time to end it." On day 6 of the 10-day notice, Marin sent the final offer. This was not a bluff. This was an ultimatum. It was sent to Colton, Eleanor, and Tessa. She proposed a private settlement agreement, a final, last-chance offer to avoid the public filing. The terms were immediate: full payment of the $74,160 via wire transfer, a formal written letter of apology from all three of them, Colton, Tessa, and Eleanor, for conspiracy to defraud Stewart Works Buildco, verifiable, legal proof that the manipulative will, the one disinheriting me, had been revoked and destroyed, and the previous, equitable will restored. I read the draft Marin sent me. "It's good," I told her over the phone, "but it's missing one thing." "What?" "The apology," I said. "A written letter is paper. They can sign it and feel nothing. They are masters of the written performance. I want it done in person. I want them to read their apologies aloud. And I want them to do it in front of my father. I want him, just once, to see them for who they are, without the cashmere and the excuses. And I want the entire proceeding videotaped and notarized. There was a long pause on the line. Addison, Marin finally said, that is beautifully brutal. It's a non-financial condition that will absolutely choke them. It's in, she added the clause, a formal notarized apology session, to be attended by Mr. Gabe Stewart, where the aforementioned apologies will be read aloud. We sent the offer. The response came in less than an hour. It was from Colton's personal email this time, not his work one. He was learning, but not fast enough. It was one word: no. No counteroffer, no negotiation. Just the pure, unadulterated arrogance of a man who still believed I was the asset. He was still betting that I was the daughter, not the creditor. He was still betting that I would blink, that I would break, that I would prioritize family over justice. He was betting on an old version of me, a version he and my family had killed. I called Marin. He refused, I said. He refused, she confirmed. So we're done here, I said. No more offers. No more offers, she agreed. Addison, once I do this, the story goes public. The journalist I've been cultivating at the Gazette. He's already sniffing around ash and alder because of your anonymous tip. This will be the confirmation. It will be in the paper. It will be on the county website. It will be permanent. I looked around my workshop. I saw the blueprints for the school project. Project Lantern. I saw the new locks on my door. Marin, I said. Burn it to the ground. The Gray Bridge Community Fund Gala was the social apex of the holiday season. It was my mother's Super Bowl. For years, she had chaired the committee, her picture appearing in the Gray Bridge Gazette, the very model of the standard-bearing, civic-minded hostess. This year, the gala was her crowning achievement, celebrating the fund's commitment to family and community. She had no idea that I was one of the event's largest anonymous donors. Or, more specifically, Stewart Works Build Co. was, when the fund had put out a bid for the staging and audiovisual setup for the gala. My company had won it, and then I had donated the entire cost, the truss, the lighting, the 80-square-foot LED screen, and the technician back to the fund. In return, I had only one small contractual request that my own technician, a man on my payroll, would be the one running the control board from the back of the ballroom. I arrived not as a guest, but as a vendor. I wore my black suit, but this time with a Stewart Works AV crew lanyard. I wasn't on the guest list. I was in the control booth, at the back of the cavernous, beautifully decorated room, with a perfect elevated view. I had a laptop, a soundboard, and a direct, hardwired connection to the massive screen that served as the stage's backdrop. My mother, Eleanor, was a vision. She was in a deep green velvet dress, her hair perfect, moving through the crowd, a queen in her court. I saw Colton and Tessa, standing near her. Their first public appearance since the birthday party. They looked stiff, their smiles like masks stapled to their faces. They were putting on a brave, united front, the picture of a family wrongly accused. They still thought this was a private matter. They still thought this was a secret. My father was not there. The evening wore on. Speeches were made. Silent auction items were sold. Then, the MC, a local radio personality, stepped up to the podium. And now, he boomed, his voice echoing through the speakers I had installed. It is my distinct honor to introduce the woman who made all of this possible. The heart of the Gray Bridge Community Fund. Please, a warm welcome for Mrs. Eleanor Stewart. The applause was thunderous. My mother walked to the podium, beaming, accepting the adoration. She was home. She tapped the microphone, and the room fell silent. Thank you, Bob, she said, her voice smooth and warm. Oh, what a night, looking out at all your faces. I am reminded of what is truly important: community, giving back, and of course, family. She clasped her hands on the podium. Behind her, the massive LED screen showed the gala's logo, a tasteful looping graphic of a stylized bridge. "Family," she continued, her voice taking on that perfect practice note of sincere emotion, "is our safe harbor. It is the place we come home to. It is the rock we build our lives on. It is the one place, in this crazy, cold world, where we know we will be taken care of, where we will be protected. Our family is our ultimate trust." In the back of the room, in the darkness of the control booth, I pressed a single key. Behind her, the looping gala logo vanished. It was replaced, instantaneously, with a high-resolution, 20-foot-tall image of a scanned document. It was an invoice from Stewart Works Build Co. for kitchen renovation cabinets, counters, $9,400. Eleanor didn't see it. She was in the lights, playing to the crowd, but the crowd saw it. There was a ripple, a collective, confused murmur. A man in the front row, a banker I knew, squinted, reading the document. "Our commitment to this fund," Eleanor said, "is like a family's commitment to its home. It must be built on a strong foundation." I pressed the key again. The screen changed. A new invoice. Roofing architectural shingles. Labor $14,600. The murmur grew louder. People were turning to each other. I saw a woman in the second row point. Eleanor faltered. She could feel the change in the room. The adoring silence was gone, replaced by a confused, restless whispering. She looked over her shoulder, confused, at the screen. She saw the invoice. She saw my company's name. She saw the dollar amount. Her face, broadcast on two smaller screens flanking the stage, was a silent movie of dawning, abject horror. She turned back to the microphone. I don't know what that is. A technical issue. It's just the receipts, Mom," I said. My voice, not hers, came out of the speakers. I was at the control booth, speaking into the master microphone. My voice filled the ballroom, calm, clear, and amplified by 10,000 watts. "But you're right," I continued. "Let's move on." I hit the next key. The invoices were gone. The screen was now filled with the screenshot of Colton's email. His #com email address was visible at the top. The text was enormous, unavoidable. "The key is to keep the asset Addison engaged by temporarily placating the creditor until she's paid in full for the patio installation. Once her work is complete, we can file the transfer and she will have no further claim. The less she knows, the cleaner the break." The room was no longer murmuring. It was a dead, shocked void. I saw Colton, halfway across the room, physically recoil. He looked like he'd been shot. Tessa just covered her face. Eleanor was frozen. She was staring at the words, "The asset Addison." The MC, Bob, scrambled onto the stage, his face pale with panic. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a terrible, terrible technical difficulty. Please, if you'll just... Mrs. Stewart." "It's not a difficulty," I said, my voice still filling the room. "It's a clarification." I stepped out of the booth, walking down the center aisle toward the stage, my lanyard still on. The spotlight, the one meant for Eleanor, found me. Every eye in the room followed me. I reached the front of the stage but didn't step onto it. I stood on the floor, looking up at my mother's shattered, uncomprehending face. I took the microphone from the stand. I was no longer an anonymous voice. I was here. "Good evening," I said to the crowd. "My name is Addison Stewart, and I am the founder of Stewart Works Build Co. I am the contractor who was just referred to as the asset and the creditor." The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the amplifiers. "My mother is right," I said, turning to look at the crowd. "Family should be a safe harbor. Community should be built on trust. That is why, 2 months ago, Stewart Works Build Co. pledged $50,000 to this fund to build and stock the new Graybridge Community Kitchen." A smattering of polite, confused applause. Tonight, I am here to say that my company is officially and publicly withdrawing that sponsorship. The applause died. I cannot, in good conscience, donate $50,000 to a community kitchen while my own invoices, for my own family, remain unpaid. I cannot build a kitchen for the town when the people who preach about safe harbors are actively conspiring to defraud my company. My pledge will be reinstated in full on the day that the $74,000 debt on the screen is paid, in full. I looked up at Eleanor. My company, Stewart Works Build Co's, is filing a mechanics lien against 124 Cedar Ridge Lane tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. It will be public record. Thank you. I placed the microphone on the stage at her feet. I didn't look at Colton. I didn't look at Tessa. I turned and walked back up the aisle. It was the longest, quietest walk of my life. No one moved. No one spoke. They just watched. The daughter who had just, in the most public way possible, detonated her own family. I pushed through the double doors at the back of the ballroom. My heart was hammering. My hands were shaking. I had done it. I had burned it to the ground. I was in the lobby, leaning against a pillar, trying to catch my breath, when a woman approached me. She was young, in her mid-20s, wearing a simple black dress and an intern-level lanyard. She looked terrified, but determined. "Ms. Stewart," she whispered, clutching a small, black USB stick in her hand. "Yes." "My name is Maya," she said, her voice trembling. I'm a paralegal assistant at Ash Alder." My blood went cold. "I work for Colton's team," she said, talking fast, her eyes darting around the empty lobby. We all know what he's been doing. He's an arrogant bastard. He uses the firm's resources for all his personal family stuff. He's been using the firm's email, the firm's servers. It's a huge violation of the ethics code. We're all terrified of him. But after your anonymous tip?" The partner started asking questions. She was shaking so hard she could barely speak. "What is this, Maya?" I asked, looking at the USB drive. "It's his login history," she said, shoving it into my hand. Her palm was sweaty. "It's the firm's IP address logs, matched to the timestamps on his sent emails. It's proof. It's proof he was at his desk, on company time, on company property, using company resources. To plan all of this, it's the metadata from the night he sent that asset email. It's the gun. The partners will ignore a family squabble. They can't ignore this. This is a violation. He's a liability." I looked at the small, black piece of plastic in my hand. It was the nail for the coffin. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you giving this to me?" Maya looked at me, and for the first time, her eyes weren't scared. They were angry. "Because my mother is a contractor," she said. "She's a house painter, and I've watched men like him stiffer on invoices my entire life." "Go get him." Before I could say another word, she turned and disappeared into a side hallway. I stood in the lobby, the muffled sound of chaos just beginning to erupt from the ballroom as the MC tried, and failed, to regain control. I heard the first raised voice. I heard a woman's sob. I looked at the USB drive in my hand. The battle was over. But the war had just been won by an ally I never knew I had. The first cell phone flashes started going off inside the ballroom as guests, finally rebooting, began to document the fallout. The story was out. It was no longer a secret. It was a scandal, and I was holding the final piece of evidence. The gala was a tactical victory. The days that followed were about the strategic occupation of the territory I had won. The public fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The Graybridge Gazette, fueled by my anonymous tip, Maya's internal evidence, and now a dozen eyewitness accounts from the gala, ran a story. It was not on the front page, which was still reserved for the upcoming holiday parade, but it was on the front page of the Business Society section. The headline was polite but devastating: Ash Alder attorney. Community fund chair mired in local contractor dispute. It detailed the public accusations, the unusual presentation at the gala, And the pending, publicly filed notice of intent to lien. It mentioned Colton by name. It mentioned Eleanor by name. It quoted my no-comment response, which I had given to the reporter when he called. It was a quiet, precise, and utterly lethal incision. 3 days after the gala, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. It's Gabe. Can you meet me at the diner before we open? 6 a.m. My father had never, in my entire life, asked to meet me one-on-one. The Blue Lantern Diner at 6 in the morning is a place of sacred quiet. The grills are cold, the chrome is gleaming in the pre-dawn light, and the only sound is the hum of the coffee machine. When I walked in, he was sitting in one of the worn vinyl booths, not in his usual spot behind the counter. He looked small. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Addison," he said. His voice was rough. "Dad," I said. I didn't sit. I stood by the booth, my work jacket still on. He didn't make eye contact. He just slid a small, old-fashioned, blue savings passbook across the Formica table. "It's not all of it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't know. Addie, I swear to God, I didn't know the specifics. I didn't know about the will, about the accounts. I let her handle everything. I always have." He was confessing, but it was still an excuse. I didn't say, "How could you not know?" I didn't say. "You were in the room." I just looked at the passbook. "This is all I have that's just mine," he continued, pushing it closer. "It's an old savings account my mother left me. It's $37,000. It's my half. Please, Addie, take it. It's my half of the bill." I looked at the passbook, this relic from a life he had hidden from my mother, and I felt a small, sharp sting, not of pity, but of a cold, final clarity. This was his one act of rebellion, decades late. I picked up the passbook, then I reached into my jacket, pulled out a pen and a pre-printed Stewart Works Build Co. receipt book. I clicked the pen. I wrote the date. Received from Gabe Stewart, amount $37,091, and in the memo line, I wrote partial payment for invoice 124C, remaining balance due. I tore off the pink carbon copy and slid it across the table. "This is your receipt, Dad," I said. "Marin's office will need a copy." That's when he broke. He put his head in his hands, and his shoulders started to shake, a low, dry, terrible sound. He was weeping, not for me, but for himself, for the ruin of his life. I stood there, my hand on the receipt book. The daughter in me, the one who had spent a lifetime craving his protection, wanted to sit down, wanted to put her arm around him. The CEO held me upright. The builder kept my spine straight. I did not move. "I have to get to my site, Dad," I said, my voice not unkind, but not warm, just firm. "I'll let Marin know this payment is pending." I left him there, crying into his hands in the empty diner. The old emotional levers were all broken, and I was grateful for it. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with another text from a new, unknown number. "Addie, it's me, Tessa. I'm so sorry. I regret everything. Colton, I just miss you. Please, sis, can we talk?" I stared at the word sis. It was a key she had always used, a key that unlocked my guilt, my obligation, my big sister instinct to fix. I felt nothing. I didn't reply to Tessa. I forwarded a screenshot of the text to Marin Doyle. 10 minutes later, Tessa's phone buzzed. It was not a text from me. It was a formal calendar invitation from the law offices of Marin Doyle. The event title was Mandatory Virtual Mediation Apology Session. The attendee list included Marin Doyle, Addison Stewart, Tessa A., and Colton A. The location was a secure video link. The only reply I sent was to Marin, "The pressure is working." The pressure was indeed working. The day after the gala, Marin had sent the USB drive from Maya, along with the news article and a copy of the Notice of Intent to Lien, directly to the head of the Ethics Committee at Ash Alder. The result was, as Marin had predicted, immediate. Colton was not fired. That would be too public, too much of an admission. He was placed on indefinite administrative leave, pending a full internal review. He was a ghost. His name was taken off the company directory. His access codes were revoked. He was, in the language of the firm, a liability they had contained. Then came the call I had been waiting for. My mother. She had bought a new burner phone, a testament to her sheer, stubborn desperation. Addison. Her voice was not the warm, hostess voice. It was not the cold, conspiratorial voice from the kitchen. It was a voice I had never heard, a high, thin, reedy sound of pure panic. "This is Addison," I said, my voice flat. "What have you done?" she whispered. "What have you done? The Gazette, the Gala, Colton, your father. You have destroyed this family. You have ruined our name, all our friends. No one will even. What have you done to me?" There it was. Not, "What did we do to you?" but, "What have you done to me?" The air in my office was still. I looked at the blueprints for Project Lantern on my desk. "I didn't do this. Eleanor," I said, using her first name for the first time in my life. The word mom suddenly tasted like ash. "You did. What?" she sputtered. "You chose this. You made every single choice. You chose to lie. You chose to steal. You chose to conspire with Colton. And at every single moment, at the dinner, at the birthday, at the gala, you chose your reputation over the truth. You finally lost a bet. Eleanor, that's all." "I am your mother," she shrieked, the panic turning to the old, familiar rage. "You are a client who hasn't paid her bill," I said. "My lawyer has all the necessary information. Do not call this number again." I hung up. I blocked the number, and I felt the last, rusted chain link connecting me to that old life fall away. I was free. The next morning, I gathered my crew in the workshop, Luis, and the 3 others who had been with me from the start. "Good morning," I said. "2 things. First, the Cedar Ridge patio job is canceled. Permanently. We're eating the cost of the stone. We're moving on." They looked relieved. They had hated working there, hated the way my mother had treated them. "Second," I said, "I've just signed the contracts for the Graybridge Elementary School project. It's a full district contract, starting with Project Lantern, the community kitchen. It's a big, paying, honest job." They cheered. "One last thing," I said, holding up a file. "I just met with a financial advisor. I am creating the Stewart Works Crew Emergency Fund. I am seeding it with my own money. It's an insured account, and a percentage of the profits from every job we do from now on will go into it. If your truck breaks down, if your kid gets sick, if you have a family emergency, this company, this team, will have your back. You will never be in a position where you are forced to choose between your family and your paycheck. You will never be made to feel like just the help. I wish I'd had this. So now, we do." Luis, a man of few words, just looked at me, his eyes shining. He clapped me on the shoulder. It was the only validation I needed. That weekend, I moved. I didn't just move out of my apartment. I moved into a small, foreclosed-upon bungalow on the other side of town. It was a wreck. It had bad wiring, a leaky roof, and terrible plumbing. I bought it outright with the last of my personal savings. The money I had kept separate from the business. That Saturday, I was not a CEO. I was not a creditor. I was just a builder. I sat on the dusty floor of my new, empty living room. I pulled out my tools. I found the main electrical panel. I opened it up, and I began the slow, meticulous, and deeply satisfying work of rebuilding my life. One wire, one outlet, one perfectly installed light switch at a time. A month later, I was having lunch. It was at the Blue Lantern Diner, at noon, in our regular booth. My father sat across from me. It was our first, scheduled, monthly lunch. He looked better. He was running the diner. He was present. The new menu is a good idea. Dad, I said, pointing to the whiteboard. Yeah, well, he smiled. A small, real smile. Figured it was time for a change. We ate in silence for a few minutes. It was a new, awkward, but not uncomfortable silence. She called me, he said, his eyes on his plate. I waited. Eleanor, he clarified. She's at her sister's in Florida. She's not happy. I see, I said. And Tessa? And Colton? They're going to that mediation, the one your lawyer set up. That's good, I said. Addie, he said, and he finally looked at me. Are we ever going to be? I put down my fork. I looked at my father, at this good, weak man who was trying, in his own way, to build a bridge. Dad, I said, I'm glad we're having lunch. I am. But I can't talk about them. I won't. I am done being the repair person for their bad decisions. I'm here, for you. But I can't be in the middle of that. He looked down. I thought, for a moment, he would retreat, that the old habit would take over. But he just nodded. Slowly. Okay, he said, his voice quiet. Okay, Addison, that's fair. He picked up his fork. So, this school project, Project Lantern, tell me about the kitchen. What kind of ventilation are you installing? I smiled, and I started to tell him. The 10-day notice period expired on a gray frozen Tuesday. It was a day of absolute deafening silence. They had not called. They had not wired the money. They had not, it seemed, understood that the person they were dealing with was no longer their daughter, but a creditor. They were still betting I would blink. At 9 a.m. on the 11th day, Marin Doyle electronically filed the mechanic's lien with the Graybridge County Registrar of Deeds. The file was accepted. It was time-stamped. It was done. My invoice for $74,160 was now a permanent, public, red flag attached to the deed of 124 Cedar Ridge Lane. It was a scar, visible to every bank, every lender, every title company, and any curious neighbor with access to the county website. The house, their primary asset, was frozen solid. The universe, it seems, enjoys a synchronized takedown. That same afternoon, at 3:05 p.m., the Ethics Committee at Ash Alder LLP concluded their internal review. The USB drive from Maya, combined with the public humiliation of the Gazette article, had been a cannonball. The metadata was irrefutable. Colton had used firm servers, on firm time, to architect a multi-pronged conspiracy to defraud a creditor. The firm, terrified of a lawsuit, acted not with justice, but with ruthless self-preservation. Colton was not just suspended. The decision, delivered via a cold internal memo, was indefinite suspension pending disbarment review. It was a corporate execution. His access was cut. His name was removed from the directory. He was a non-entity. The shockwave from those two events, the lien and the suspension, hit their house at the same time. I learned later that Tessa was the first to completely unravel. The vacation home at Lakeshore Meadow, the one purchased with the money siphoned from my mother's account, was leveraged. It was in Tessa's name, but the financing had been secured by Colton's projected income as a partner at Ash Alder, with his career vaporized. A material adverse change clause in their loan was triggered. The bank was calling. They were in default. They were going to lose the house, the down payment, everything. The final, desperate move came from Eleanor. She had been in Florida, hiding at her sister's, but this news brought her back. She found my father's new, private cell number at the diner. She called him, a raging, hysterical storm of blame. The gala, the lien, the neighbors, and now Colton's job, Tessa's house. It was all my fault. I had destroyed them. She demanded, not asked, but demanded that Gabe fix it, that he call me, that he use his father card, that he make me stop. My father, the man who had spent 34 years acting as a sponge for her narcissistic rage, listened to her entire tirade, When she was finally done, gasping for breath, he said only 4 words. "It's too late. Eleanor." He hung up the phone. 2 days later, Marin's office received the email. They were ready to surrender. The mediation, as they had requested, was a fiction. It was not a negotiation. It was the site of an unconditional surrender. We met at the North Waverly Notary office, a sterile, beige room that smelled of stale coffee and printer toner. I was there with Marin, and, as I had stipulated, my father, Gabe, was there. He sat at the head of the table, not as a participant, but as a witness. His face was calm, his hands folded. He just watched. Tessa and Colton arrived first. They were unrecognizable. The polish was gone. The entitlement was gone. They were just gray. Colton's suit was wrinkled. His eyes were dead. Tessa was pale, her eyes swollen and red. They looked hollowed out. They sat down. They did not look at me. They did not look at my father. Colton slid 2 items across the table to Marin. The first was a cashier's check, drawn on a new account I didn't recognize. It was for the full, complete amount $74,160. It was the principal, the interest, and every cent of Marin's legal fees. The second was a typed sheet of paper. "Read it," Marin said, her voice flat. Colton's hands were shaking. He picked up the paper. He began to read, his voice a dry, dead monotone. "I, Colton last name, do hereby apologize for my role in the conspiracy to defraud Stewart Works Build Co." When he finished, Tessa picked up her copy. Her voice was a wet, broken whisper. "I, Tessa last name, do hereby apologize for conspiracy to commit fraud." When she was finished, I spoke. "No," I said. They both looked up, their eyes wide with a new, fresh panic. "That's not good enough," I said. I pointed to my father, the silent witness at the end of the table. "You read it to him." Colton's jaw tightened, a flash of the old arrogance, but he was broken. He turned, physically turned his chair, to face my father. "Gabe," he choked out, I apologize for my actions." Tessa broke down completely, dissolving into sobs. "Daddy," she wept. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Gabe just watched her. He didn't move. He didn't comfort her. He just watched. The door to the office slammed open. Eleanor swept in, 20 minutes late, radiating fury. She was dressed in a pristine, white linen suit, her sunglasses on. She was still performing. "This is utterly absurd," she snapped, pulling off her glasses. She ignored me. She ignored my father. She looked at Marin. "I am here. I am told I need to sign something to have this nuisance you've filed removed from my home." Marin slid the apology letter across the table. "You need to read this first, aloud, as per the terms of the settlement." Eleanor laughed. It was a sharp, ugly, barking sound. "Absolutely not. I am not performing for her. I am not reading this childish, forced confession. I will sign the settlement papers. You will remove the lien, and we will be done with this." "As you wish," Marin said. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small, black digital audio player. She placed it on the table. Eleanor stared at it. "What is that?" "That," Marin said, "is Exhibit A, the recording from your kitchen, 3 weeks after the birthday party, the one where you, Tessa, and Colton explicitly discuss the transfer of benefits file and the secret account at Harbor Ridge Credit Union. The one where you, and I quote, say she won't get a single cent." Eleanor's face went the color of primer. "Now," Marin continued, "this recording has been transcribed. It is ready to be attached to a new civil suit for fraudulent conveyance. A suit which, I assure you, will be far more public and far more expensive than this little meeting. Or, you can read the apology, and you can sign the addendum. The lien, by the way, stays. It stays on your house, blocking any sale, any refinancing, any transfer of title, until all conditions are met. Your move. Checkmate. Eleanor was trapped. Her entire world, her home, her finances, her social standing was held hostage by her own words. Her hand, shaking with a rage so profound it was seismic, snatched the paper from the table. She stood. She did not look at me. She did not look at my father. She stared at the far wall, and she read. Her voice a low, venomous, choked hiss. I apologize for my role in the conspiracy to defraud. Stewart Works Build Co. When she was done, the silence was absolute. Good, I said, my voice calm. I slid a new document across the table. Now you all sign the addendum. What? Eleanor hissed. This wasn't. It is now, I said. These are the final terms for the removal of the lien. 1. You will legally and verifiably revoke the manipulative will. The estate reverts to its original, 50-50 split. 2. My father's name and assets are to be legally separated from yours. The payment he made is his. His assets are his. You will not touch them. And 3. You, Tessa, and Colton are legally forbidden from ever using my name, my story, or my company in any context. No sob stories about the daughter who abandoned me. No tales of my struggle. You will not speak of me. You will not reference me. You will erase me from your narrative. I am done being your asset. I am done being your story. It was the final cut, the final boundary. Eleanor looked at the paper. She looked at Colton, who was a ghost. She looked at Tessa, who was just a puddle. She looked at the cashier's check. She snatched the pen. She signed her name, a vicious, angry slash of ink. Tessa and Colton followed, the notary, a silent woman who had been watching the entire drama with bored professionalism, took the pages. She looked them over. She took her heavy, metal embosser. She aligned the papers. She pressed down. Thunk. The sound was a gunshot. It was a gavel. It was the sound of a final, heavy, iron door clanging shut. I stood up. I walked out of that office, past them, past their ruin, and into the cold, bright afternoon. Snow was beginning to fall, clean, white flakes that melted on my face. My father was waiting for me by my truck. He didn't try to hug me. He just looked at me, his eyes clear for the first time. It's done, Dad, I said. He nodded, a long, slow movement. Lunch, Tuesday. Tuesday, I said. I drove to the elementary school. My crew was packing up. I handed Luis 4 envelopes. What's this, boss? He asked. That's the deposit back for the bluestone you all paid out of pocket, I said. And a bonus. For the weather. For sticking with me through the storm. Go home. Be with your families. I'll see you Monday. Luis didn't say thank you. He just looked at me, a deep, solid respect in his eyes, and nodded. It was more than enough. That night, I sat in my new, half-finished house, the house I was building, for me. I opened my laptop and sent one, final, private email. It was to Maya, the paralegal. Maya, thank you. You chose to stand in the light. If you ever find yourself looking for a new job, Stewart Works is always hiring. The door is always open. Addison. The snow fell for 3 days. By the end of the week, the world felt scoured, clean, and new. My workshop, the one I had built onto the side of my new house, was finally finished. The walls smelled of fresh cedar and opportunity. I picked up a small, rectangular sign I had routed from a piece of reclaimed maple. The letters were carved deep and true Lantern Lab. I tacked it to the wall, right above my main workbench, a reminder, a promise. I stood back, checking the line. It was level. It was strong. It was mine. I picked up my hammer, the handle worn smooth from my own grip. I tested its weight. I smiled. The room was quiet. There was no applause. I didn't need it. I was clapping for myself. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from. We'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button to help this story be heard by more people.